All right. I have two guys that are going to join us up here. Brett, would you like to come up? And Dan, come on up. Come on up. We'll have you both have a seat here you'll be in the hot seat. And basically, these two guys were original kingdom men. So they've had a little bit of experience following our precepts. Bear with me, and I'm going to put up our precepts, basically. Hang on a minute. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, I'll get that in a second. There we go. And there we go. Okay, and of course it's not on the screen. I'll work on that while they're talking. But basically, I've asked them to talk a little bit. They're going to take turns, go through some things. They'll be, tell us a little bit about where you're from, how long you've been at OLMC, and what brought you here, and a little bit about your families. We'd like to know a little bit about their lives as Catholics as they grew up, and what made them want to get serious about their faith. What has being a kingdom man meant to you? These are the questions that I sent to them. And is there a noticeable change between now and before you took up the commitment? And then what is the hardest kingdom man commitment for you to keep? What is the easiest? And so without further ado, I'll have some questions afterwards, after each one has a chance to tell us a little bit about themselves. And for now, I'll turn it over to Dan, and then we'll let Brett follow up, and then I'll have those questions. Dan?
My name is Dan Pearson. I'm originally from Minnesota, moved here about 10 years ago for work, and a little closer, okay. Let's see. Been coming here to OLMC for about 7 years. If I go back to the beginning, growing up, I didn't come from a religious family. Never really went to church when I was young. But I always had that sense that, there was a God and that I should be seeking him. So in my teens, I just found a Bible and I just started reading, but I didn't know how to really study. So I started at the beginning and went through, and I really didn't, I didn't actually make it up to the New Testament. By the time I was 20, I was still in the Old Testament. But after high school, I went off to school, and it was there that I started RCIA, and actually was baptized and had my first communion when I was 20. The next 20 years was probably some ups and downs in the faith journey. I read about other religions and kind of got different perspectives. And then eventually I got married, had a daughter. And then once she got old enough to go to school, we originally sent her off to public school for kindergarten. But then we saw that she really wasn't doing well. So we enrolled her in a Catholic school. And I think that was where, at least for my wife and I, we started changing, or at least had more involvement in the church, started going every Sunday, getting more involved with the church, doing different things, different ministries. And then we moved here. So my daughter's actually been in Catholic school all the way up through the first 2 years of college. Let's see. Since, okay. So when we moved my daughter here to San Diego, we started over at St. Michael's, and as part of the tuition reduction, you became a member of St. Michael's. So we did that for a couple of years, but then it really wasn't quite right for us. We started going to different churches, and eventually came here to OLMC, and we knew that this was the right place. It just had the right feeling for us, I think the right values. Eventually, I joined the Knights of Columbus, and I think that helped further increase my faith and my looking for God and the answers and direction in my life. And then about beginning of COVID, that's when I signed up for the Kingdom Men. And it was when we first started coming back, and services were still being held outside where we had the installment. And I think since that time, some of the things of reading more into church history, the church fathers, has increased my faith, I think, quite a bit. And then really starting, because of COVID, started reading other things and trying to put together the direction that things are happening in the world with also our religion, and seeing that everything was really all connected. Everything is maybe for the good and the bad, the demonic that's taking place in society, and the fight for the good and evil. I think, I can't say that I'm really following all the precepts really well for the Kingdom Men, but I have been praying the rosary daily, missed maybe once a month over the last few years. But the others are a little more difficult for me. Just having a busy life, it's difficult to come in and do the devotions, and then staying up with the accountability partner. That's probably my biggest challenge. I think that's legit for me.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brett Moore. I've been going to this parish for about 10 years. Prior to that, we went to St. Michael's. We went to Mass in this when it was a church. I'm sitting where the priest would be. I was born to a Catholic family in Los Angeles. I grew up in Los Angeles. And my mother was a single mother. She had me when she was 17, 18. My father and mother were high school sweethearts. And at the time, they would say, go get married. You're pregnant, go get married. She had me as a young mother. She raised me the way she thought she should be as a Catholic. But I think in a lot of Catholic families, Catholicism is something you do. You don't really investigate it. You don't investigate your faith. This is what you're supposed to do. And so what ends up happening with people is they go through the motions, but not really understanding the symbolism or the meaning behind it. I grew up with my mother, and she was very kind of liberal. Grew up in the 60s, so you get that whole, I think that's where the whole woke thing kind of started. And as these people live their life, they kind of try to bring it into politics as they got to the age where politics becomes their thing. And the whole hippie movement and the whole woke thing, they really mesh well. And it never quite sat well with me growing up. She sent me to Catholic school, so I started getting, that's kind of the irony of it, I started getting the education in my faith as her faith was dwindling. And I loved it. I loved what I was learning in school. And I would say the prayers, and I'm not sure I understood them then, and I'm still a student now, and that's why I appreciate the Kingdom Men, is it helps me codify my faith and try and work towards things. I'm up here speaking to you not because I'm an expert in anything, but because I'm trying to be a righteous man. And I think all of you who show up in this forum are trying to be good men too and do the right thing. One day when I was a kid, I was feeling very alone. I didn't have any male role model in my life. And I was out and it was late at night. No one really cared where I walked around in the neighborhood where I was at. No one cared about the kids there. They were all single mothers. That's kind of what the poor neighborhoods are like. It's almost like modern day when they say you take care of orphans and widows. Well, nowadays it's not from war. It's just because of neglect. The men go off and do their own thing, and the women are left to take care of the kids. And you find that in the poorer neighborhoods. Or the parents are so busy trying to make ends meet that no one takes care of the kids and gives them what they need. So I was out late one night and I was thinking, I'm like, and I pray to our Father who art in heaven, and he says, our Father. And I'm like, well, God, will you be my Father? Will you show me the way? Will you show me, will you be my Father and just teach me? And so I think then was when I really started to take my faith more seriously. I was a young teen. I still messed up a lot, trust me. But I think that gave me somewhat of a conscience, so I knew where I could go back to when I did the wrong thing. And I went to the Army, went to college, and I always felt like if I keep doing what I'm supposed to do, someday it'll pay off. And you think pay off in material terms, like worldly terms, like I'll have material wealth, the respect of others and things like that. But really, I think the greatest riches came from investing in my faith. And that happened a lot. A lot of it was by divine intervention. I mean, I think we think we know where we're going to go, but I think God directs us. And when I went to St. Michael's, it was a good parish. I had no qualms with it. But then I realized, I'm like, how we ended up at St. Michael's is our oldest son. He was almost 1 year old and he still hadn't been baptized. And it was because kind of that whole thing where you try and follow tradition and not your faith. And my wife was thinking, well, we want to have a big party. It wasn't the right time. There's never a right time. We want to invite all the family. And then I started to realize, and so did her mother, said, look, you just get them baptized. It's, it's not about being showy. It's about, even if it's quick and dirty, you get it done. You get them baptized. So we went to St. Michael's, and he was baptized. And it's always interesting how these things happen. He was baptized on the feast of the baptism of our Lord. We didn't plan it that way, but he was. And it just reminded me of the importance of baptism. And then I was thinking, okay, we went to this church where he was baptized. Why don't we continue going here? And then someone pointed out, OLMC is a great church. Why don't you go check it out? And then I started to realize, if you're in a community, you want to go to church in your community, whether or not it's, you like this pastor, you like that pastor. That reminds me of more like how Protestants think. Like, I like this pastor, I like this pastor, I like this. It's the church, it's your community. If you don't like something, do something about it. It's like Father Anthony always says that. People say, why don't you? He's like, great, why don't you take care of that? You want that change, good. Be the change you want to be. You want to see in others. So we started coming here, and first thing I did is when we came here is met Father Anthony, and he said, oh, we're members in the community who wanted to come back here. Oh, where are you coming from? And, true to form, like how he is, he's all about business. He says, have you had all your sacraments? And so he's about, okay, let's do this, and let's do it right. And he's very traditional. I think a lot of people here like that about him. But that being said, if he moved somewhere else next week, I'm not going to follow him there. I'm still going to go to OLMC because this is my community. This is where I feel home. And if I needed that brought back, I'm sure hopefully he instilled that in me where I could also bring that back to the community too. So after being in OLMC for a while, I started thinking, I've got a lot of friends outside of the church. I don't really have a lot of friends in the church. And I wanted to hang out with like-minded people that had a similar point of view on life, on religion, on philosophy. That's not to say rigid adherence, because there's a lot of people in the community who think differently in us, and they're probably well-meaning people. They're just uninformed. Their heart, they believe many different things in us, and I'd rather create a foundation of friends that have similar faith experiences. So I came to the men's group one day. I mean, I just was like, okay, I'll go see some men who obviously want to live a righteous life. And then I was brought up, they're one of these forums, Kingdom Men. And someone showed this to me, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I really like this. So I went home and I started praying the rosary that day. It was about 8-9 years ago. Every morning since then, I prayed the rosary. And at first I wasn't sure how to do it. So I'm like, well, I'm busy, so I'm going to pray the rosary when I'm driving. Kind of dangerous. If you forget something, you're like, oh, what did I forget? Oh, wait, I'm looking at a piece of paper. So that's not the way you want to pray the rosary. And then I realized, get up early, pray it in the morning at the beginning of the day in a quiet time, and then contemplate what you're getting from it. Contemplate each individual mystery. And so I started doing that. And around that same time, we had family members that visited my wife's Filipino, and they're very religious, and they bring the Virgin Mary to our house, and we had Mary with us for a month, and they start by praying the rosary at our house that day, and then you're supposed to pray with your family. It's a family rosary prayer for the whole month. It's supposed to help bring the family together. So all of this would happen around the same time. It was a really nice time in my life. A lot of blessings happened then. We were in our late 40s, and I told my wife I want to have another child. And people would always say, oh, you got 2 kids and you got your boy. I'm like, well, it wasn't really about just having a boy, having more kids. So they said, well, you might not have another boy. So that month when we were praying the rosary, we found out my wife was pregnant. I'm in my late 40s. My wife's in her late, I'm almost 50. She's in her late 40s, and she becomes pregnant, and it was a blessing. It was absolutely a blessing. And then people always say, oh, that's crazy. Why would you try and have a kid in your 40s? That's crazy. I'm like, I've done a lot of crazy things in my life. Having a kid is not crazy. Yeah, having a child is not crazy. It's a blessing. It's a real blessing. So back to the Kingdom Men. I was doing everything on this list, and then one day Father Anthony said, hey, let's all the Kingdom Men get together. And I went in the room, and he's like, you're not a Kingdom Man. And I thought, well, I thought I was. And then he said, no, you got to be initiated. You got to be part of the group. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I want to do that. And so he kind of walked me through it, how to do it. And I kind of realized what he was getting at. I mean, when you do this list of things, one of the things on there is fraternity. And I think that's part of the reason we all come here is we want fraternity. And so having an accountability partner gives you a sense of fraternity with that individual. And also through that connects you to other Kingdom Men who have partners and have someone to talk to if they need someone to talk to. And I'm with Dan here. It's kind of the hardest thing because sometimes when you're looking for this partner, you're like, oh, okay, I don't really know this person. And so the first accountability partner I had, we didn't talk a lot. And he ended up passing away. He's a good man, but he passed away. And then the second one, we didn't talk enough, and then we just kind of stopped talking. I still did everything on the list. And then recently, one of the men I did the discipleship group with, Gary, became a Kingdom Man. And I said, when I heard that, I was like, well, that's great. I know Gary. We can talk to each other. I feel comfortable talking to him. He's a very, very likable guy. He's spoken to us here before, and I said, this is a great opportunity. So I asked him if he could be an accountability partner. Barry, who and Chris, who speak here a lot. I think that's why they asked me to speak, so he didn't have to talk today. But they're accountability partners. I think part of the idea of having fraternity with other men that are very interested in deepening their faith is an important thing, and that's why I think the Kingdom Men is so important. And then one of the other things on this list was the Kingdom Quest, and I thank John for putting that together at one point. That's a quest where you go, and it's kind of like a retreat where you investigate your faith and learn about your faith and fortitude and strength in you, and kind of in a more masculine setting, where you're hiking and doing almost like military type exercises, but rather than fighting a physical foe, you're fighting more of your spiritual foe and those that are trying to hold you back. So that part of it, people always say, well, I do all these things on this list. Why do I need to join a group called the Kingdom Men? And for those reasons I stated. I mean, you could pray alone in your house. You could walk around all day and do things that are righteous, but it's so much better when you have a core of men that can support you if you need help. So I would encourage all of you to consider the Kingdom Men, and also try and become a student and better your faith by doing that. It's one of the things like on here is evangelizing. So what I've started doing is talking to people about my faith. And when I first started doing these practices, a lot of people would say, I know you. I know how you are. Who do you think you are? I would get it from my spouse. I would get it from friends, and I'm like, everybody has a past. I'm trying to be someone different. And so it's important to practice these things. And then, like Father Anthony says, you get rid of one thing, you replace it with another. So I'm trying to replace my life with things that make me a better person. I think my kids see it too. They're like, what I like about you is you always try and improve yourself. So I'm always trying to improve myself. And after about a year or two, people that told me who do I think I am stopped asking me that, because they see I'm a different person. So I'm acting differently. I'm doing things differently. Still make a lot of mistakes. Still get angry. Still do things I shouldn't do. But I go to confession at least once a month or every other month and try and make up for the things that I can make up for. I think it's important to be invested in not just ourselves, but in others around us. And I'm sure there's many people that would say, what are you doing for the community? What are you doing to help out? Not enough at this point, I would say. When I see like the church, how it grew, yes, they talk to each other, but also, I mean, if you look at it from what I've seen from the scriptures, they evangelize to the poor and downtrodden, the widows, the orphans, the people that were sick spiritually and physically. Us here talking to each other is great. Going out into the community, and that's something I'd like to work on more. I started with people I know that were had their own personal problems. One of them being my father, who has alcoholism, and he abandoned us when I was 1 year old. I actually went to his place in the Central Valley, found him when he was near death, and brought him here, and I took care of him, basically. I had to decide if I was going to take care of somebody who never took care of me, and I decided to do that. So I had to convince him, because he obviously thought, why would you do this? I did nothing for you. So I helped one homeless person, basically. And then I'm trying to help my mother come back. She's entrenched in this philosophy that has kind of plagued our society right now. And so I try and raise my family a certain way. I try and live a certain way. It's real easy for me to sit here with you guys because I like to surrounding myself with people like you. It's harder to surround ourselves with people that are different. When I talk to people that are different, I assume that they have goodness in their heart, they believe that they're working towards something good. So I started thinking one day, even during this, I'm like, okay, what do everybody have in common? People believe in love. They believe in truth. They believe in the virtues. And so I started thinking, oh, okay, I work with people who have different faiths. One of my doctors I work with, she's Jewish. One of my best friends and who I share an office with, he's Muslim. He's from Iran. Another woman I work with, I brought her in and I helped train her about 12 years ago. She's kind of this self-directed spirituality, like yoga, Buddhist thing. And so I try and talk to them about virtues, because most people don't believe in anger, greed, gluttony, and all the other ones, sloth, pride, lust. And so if you talk to someone about their beliefs, you find out that you have a lot in common. What I try and do is make myself, hopefully I represent the faith well, and make myself attractive enough where they're interested in what I believe. And I think it says in the Bible, Jesus is food for us. We should probably be food for others. The way we live and what we say. And so I try and cultivate a positive, masculine, Christian self. And so the men, the kingdom part of it is like, when you say, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You say that so many times, I think about it. So when I pray, I think like, what is it like in heaven? On earth as it is in heaven. I think in heaven, the virtues reign. And we get your book for Kingdom, and they gave us a 54-day prayer book about all the virtues. And I think those are the true treasures. Where virtue reigns, that's where the kingdom is. Where there's envy, you have charity, where you put the success of others first. Where you have gluttony, you replace it with temperance. Where you have anger, you replace it with patience. Where you have cynicism, you replace it with hope. Where you have greed, you replace it with almsgiving and charity. Where you have pride, where you have sloth, you replace it with diligence. Where you have lust, you replace it with chastity. And these are the things I talk about with my Muslim friend, my Eastern studying friend. And the greatest of those was a book I read recently about the angels and about the humility of God taking human form. Basically, God took human form and came to us to lower himself lower than the angels in the form of Emmanuel, Christ among us. So that kind of humility modeled through Christ is amazing to me. And I still don't understand it. I try to understand it. And so when I pray the rosary in the morning, one of the things it says is contemplation, or think about it. I pray the rosary, I contemplate the mysteries, and then I silently ask questions, and hopefully I get answers. Sometimes I do. But basically, it's complete submission to my faith and contemplation. And that's what I try and do every morning. I pray, contemplate, and submit. And I've done that for almost 10 years now, and every once in a while, God gives me a little something that I know is from God and real, and it's really great. So, Barry's standing up. It's time for me to stop.
A few. I mean, I left out a lot of details, I can tell you that. But
Well, I got some questions that might elicit some responses in that direction. But so for both of you, let's start with Dan since he started. What techniques do you employ to keep motivated and fit them into your schedule? I know that one of the things we try to do is early morning, and a lot of these A lot of these techniques are common also to the discipleship program. If any of you have gone through the discipleship program, but if you can get your meditation out of the way early in the morning before all the activity starts, and sometimes that's a challenge. How do you deal with that?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's really just pushing myself every morning to just wake up, and the first thought is to give thanks and glory to God, and then really start a conversation, just asking for guidance for the day and for the week, and then go into the prayer, and then start with the rosary and kind of proceed from there for the day.
Yeah, I realized that praying as an afterthought, it doesn't work. You don't get the benefit of it. So what I did is I made it a priority. And like I said, I replaced certain things with other things. So I get up now, I set my alarm at 4:45. I get up, I don't brush my teeth. I maybe go to the bathroom real quick, urinate, and then I go pray. And then I pray, and I look at it like this. It's like I try and be like a kid at Christmas. You know, you don't force yourself to get up at Christmas. You just get up and you go do it. You're happy to do it. And what I gain from that are gifts that, like Christmas is when Jesus came to us, and I look at the gifts he gave were the virtues. And so these are things that men, after they ate, did everything they needed to do, were able to write down their thoughts, and they're like gold, they're like treasure. So when I get up in the morning, I pray, and that's how I start my day. Yeah.
Okay, the next thing, some guys have kind of not really embraced the idea of having an accountability partner. Has it been helpful to you to have an accountability partner, and basically, how's that worked out for you?
Well, I can't say that it worked out for me very well. I think because my schedule and his schedule were a lot of conflict, so we really didn't, we weren't accountable like we should have been. So something for me to work on, among other things.
Yeah, in the past, I think I didn't quite understand the function of that. It kind of sounds like, okay, it's nice if you're friends with someone like that, but really it's about keeping people on the right path. And so it's not like going to confession. It's just about say, hey, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And then if you're not, you're not, and how can we fix that sort of thing. Plus, it also kind of brings you back to thinking about, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And did I not do it? Because now you have to tell somebody. Yeah, and we tend not to lie about those things.
The next thing is, you mentioned family reactions and that type of thing. How does your family look at you now versus how it was before you became a kingdom man?
I don't know that they look at me any different, but I think increasing my faith has helped them to increase their faith as well. So I think in that aspect, it's good.
You'd have to ask them, but I think it's made them look at me different. At the very least, I'm kind of like the type of person where I'm like, let's just do it. And we've had conversations. I know one time I had a conversation with my wife where she's more like, we got to go to church. We got to be at church on time. We got to do this. And she was like, every Sunday, and it was like, is that how it's going to be? I'm like, yeah, that's how it's going to be. That's how we're going to do it. I think that's the way, having a male presence in the house, we tend to be kind of really like about fixing things and doing it. And so if it's going to be, women want to do it where it looks great. Everything is, where it's supposed to be. I'm kind of like, if it's quick and dirty, at least I know I did it. We're going to go to church. We're going to show up on time. We're going to pray. We're going to be respectful. And I can kind of be a stickler about those things. And so sometimes I can be like the drill sergeant, but at the same time, I'm making sure that things get done. And so maybe in time, I'll develop the grace to do it with smoothness and alacrity and make it seem smooth. But I think at the very least, I've gotten where everybody in the house is focusing on their faith, and that was a few years ago. Now my wife and I are wholly on the same page, and she pushes me, and that's the good thing. So she pushes me when I'm like not doing what I'm supposed to, and I push her when I'm not supposed to. I think that's how a marriage is supposed to be, right?
So the next question has to do with how do you react to people that you don't particularly like versus before? Is there a difference there? Can you think of maybe certain instances where somebody that really repelled you, you had a different reaction to?
I guess this one's a little bit easier for me. So I think before, particularly at work, maybe people would come and ask questions where it's like, you really should know this, go away, don't talk to me. But I realize now that, we're all really on this planet. We I think are striving towards the same goals. So now I do treat them with a little more respect, and I listen, and I try to be more respectful with their time and give them the answers and help them to maybe do some of their own research so that they don't come to me as often, but at least they're on the right path instead of just turning them away. So I think that's, for me, like the greatest thing that I've seen where my attitude towards others have changed.
Was that intentional? Meaning was it brought about because of your commitment to the Lord?
Yes, definitely. I think just the more I understand, it's like, well, okay, I really should to be a better person, to treat others with a little more dignity and respect, and to help them. Like Brett would say, if you can then bring them into more of the faith at the same time, then it's a double win.
It's something I always struggle with. But with because a lot of times you feel like if you're in the right, then you get to bludgeon them with that "you're wrong, I'm right" type thing. I try and look at other people as, like I mentioned, they believe they're doing the right thing. They're trying to do the right thing. They may be misguided. They have a way of doing it. I try and follow the way, the one that Christ showed us. So I try and find God in them, and then I try and use the virtues to kind of pull that out. That's what I was saying. But I try and look for God in people that I have a strong disagreement with. For some reason, I try harder with people that I have a really strong disagreement with. The people that I see every day, I should probably try harder with them too.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to take people for granted if you know they're on the. I'll reverse the last two questions. Is your interior life more alive now? And do you go through times of desolation? And if so, do you have ways to stay on track?
I think, interior is more now. There is times of desolation, and I just try to persevere. But that's something I still need to work on.
I've heard about these times of desolation, like with Mother Teresa, she described it. I think during those times, if we continue doing what we're supposed to be doing, those are our greatest offerings to God and a sign of our faith. And also, sometimes our desolation is of our own design. We don't realize it. We somehow strayed away, and that's why we feel alone. So I continue every day to pray the rosary. There have been times when I've been discouraged, especially when you don't get the outcome you expect. I try and help my mother and my father, and you don't get the outcome you expect. Someone disappoints you, you do something right, and they hurt you back. You do it, these things are like, how come this is happening? How come these bad things are happening? I just, like St. Joseph, I try and have the faith that what I'm asked to do is correct, and to be almost stoic in a way, and try and be if you want to be a strong man, you could be stoic and soldier through it. And that's what I try and do.
Okay, and the bottom line question, do you feel closer to Jesus now?
Yes.
Yes, as well. Praying the rosary was an interesting experience. I had a really strong connection with Mary praying the rosary. And someone in the church here, when I went to encounter one time, said to me, "Do you know Jesus?" And I said, "I pray the rosary." And he said, "His mother will lead you to him." And I believe that's true. And so praying the rosary helped bring me closer to Jesus, and I began to contemplate things like more deeply, like something I never really kind of fully comprehended, and I started recently, was Jesus as God, and God incarnate among us, and God, like in John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. I'm saying, the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God, was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And so it seems like poetry to me. I'm like, God, Jesus is God dwelling among us. And my Muslim friend said, like the Trinities, I believe in one God. How can you believe that there are two or three gods? And I said, I don't know the answer to this. And he said, and I looked it up, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, oh, you're talking about the omnipotence paradox, where can God make a stone so big he can't lift it? And I said, I'm not sure the answer to that. And I read more about it, and it says, can God limit himself and to make a stone that he couldn't lift it? And the answer, I told him, I said, the answer is yes. God can limit himself. God could take a part of himself and make it into human form and humble himself. And he did that in the form of Jesus Christ. And then he ascended back to the Father. So God humbled himself. And so when I say I contemplate, sometimes people present me with challenges. I'll contemplate the Trinity weeks, months, and this program, praying the rosary, has all brought me closer to God. Yeah.
And how about questions from you guys? Anybody have any questions for these guys? First of all, how many guys are kingdom men right now? So you're kind of preaching to the choir. But, we wanted to do this because it's good to kind of check in, It's sort of like we're all accountability partners. And this is an opportunity to hear from a couple of our brothers. Boris has a question.
I started going to bed earlier, so I adjusted my work schedule. So I'm done at 3:45. I have the ability to do that now. I didn't always, but I adjusted my work schedule, and I go to bed around 9 or 10. I wish I could get everybody else to go to bed at that time, but I'm like, I'll lead by example. So I go to bed early. It's funny. The better I sleep, I'll get up after about 6 hours. So you just do the math and subtract backwards.
Yeah. I don't need this. So I'm retired now, but while I was still working, I made it a habit of getting up between 5 and 5:30, and that worked for me really well because we're told to allocate a certain amount of time for the Lord, and so we're not told when. You could do it at midday, you can do it in the morning, you can do it in the evening, and to me, and probably for most people, it worked way, way better to do it early before anything else was going on. So I would do essentially the same thing, just a little later, and my day went smoothly, man. I mean, it was amazing because then I didn't have to worry about, oh, God, I got to find out time for the Lord later on or whatever. And besides, once you're into it, all day long, you're like a crazy man speaking to God and vice versa. All day long, you know. You could hear him, oh, yeah, and then people go, who are you talking to, man? I go, oh.
Like you saying, it's the way I start my day. If I don't start my day that way, I'm not the same person. I get up. I have a room that faces to the east. It looks at Black Mountain. It's dark outside. I pray usually till I see the sun start to put a little glow on the horizon. I'm usually done before the sun rises. If I see the sunrise, I don't know why it makes me happy. It just reminds me the light's coming. But it's a nice time of day. It's a quiet time of day. My house is completely quiet, and I can hear God when I'm doing that. So it's a great thing. If I don't do that, my day's different.
I've found that if I don't start the day with a meditation, then the rest of the day is just a little off. And then if I try to do the meditation a little bit later, the phone's ringing, the texts are coming in. And
Yeah, so during my prayer, I don't say it out loud. I say the rosary in my head. And I've told my friends that I meet with this. If I can't hear the rosary in my head, there's something really off with me. There's my work problems are invading me, the fight I had with my wife, whatever. It's in my head. I have to eliminate that noise. That's how I commune with God. I say the words until I can hear only the prayer. And if I get up and I'm late and I forget to pray, I'm really off. Now I'm praying it later in the day. That happens rarely, almost never. That's why I like to get up in the morning. It makes me focus, and it helps me also know myself. If I can't concentrate on the words, then there's something wrong. And so I try and make it right.
probably needs more sleep.
Actually, I got one of those loud voices too. Anyways, well, you made something of that, and it really made me start to think. You used the word misdirected instead of misinformed. I like that.
Anybody else? Last call. All right. Well, I think that one thing stands out here, and it is that if you establish a habit pattern, a healthy habit pattern, then it will put you on the right path. Let's give a hand to our guys here.